My name is Mathias Claesen. I'm a horror researcher and the co-director of the Recreational Fear Lab at Aarhus University. And I've written several books on horror, including Why Horror Seduces, and most recently, A Very Nervous Person's Guide to Horror Movies. The biggest question of them all, at least in my line of business, is why do people watch horror? It seems like a paradox, because horror is, by its very nature, designed to elicit negative emotion. I mean, the genre itself takes its name from an emotional state, the state of being horrified. So why would we seek out entertainment products and experiences that make us feel horror? So we did one study, my colleagues and I, some years ago in a haunted house. Well, it turns out if you expose somebody to horror and you measure their fear and you measure their enjoyment, there is what we call a sweet spot of fear. It's about not being too afraid, but it's also about not being not afraid enough. You want just the right amount of fear, and that's where enjoyment is maximized. When people do things that scare them, but that also give them pleasure, what they're really doing is playing with fear. It's a kind of play behavior. And it looks like we as humans
Hey.
biological species and organism are designed to find pleasure in play. And we see it in very small kids who love peekaboo, which is a kind of baby jump scare. They love chase play, they love hide and seek. We see it in all kinds of behaviors that are really about hitting that sweet spot of fear. The question then becomes, why are we biologically designed to find pleasure in playing with fear? And I think it's because there is a great deal of learning. We learn what it feels like to be afraid.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
We learn what our limit is, we get a chance to challenge our limit. We get a chance to practice emotion regulation strategies. So it makes good sense, biologically speaking, that we, as a species, would be designed to find pleasure in playing with fear. Oh, and by the way, there's a pretty good chance you'll be killed within the next minute. So what are the positive effects of horror? This is a question that interests me a lot and that we in the Recreational Fear Lab have been really preoccupied with for a number of years now, because it looks as if there's a whole range of positive benefits. What it looks like is that horror fans seem to have better psychological resilience. They seem to be more psychologically robust than people who stay away from horror. They may reap also social benefits, because most horror experiences are social. It's something we do with others. People play scary video games.
Hey. Hey.
Scary movies together. They might feel that they get closer to their friends when they experience horror together. And some of our most recent research seems to suggest that it might even be good for physical health, that there are positive effects on the immune system from a good scare.
Hey, 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 hey.
So jump scares might be the most sort of hated element in the horror game. The jump scare elicits what is known as a startle response. It's a reflex. And it's really easy to jump scare people. I mean, you can hide behind the door and wait for somebody to walk by and then jump out and yell boo, and you get a strong reaction. And a startle reflex is a defensive mechanism that's part of our biology. And it's such a primitive part of our biology that we share it with many other species. You can jump scare a frog. So the biology behind the jump scare is actually pretty interesting.
Hey.
There's actually very little research on it. We did some research on the relationship between mental workload and jump scare intensity to investigate why jump scares are very often preceded by puzzle elements in horror games. And then when you're in the midst of solving that puzzle, suddenly, boom! There's a jump scare. And so we designed a lab study in which participants would be exposed to a mentally demanding task and then be jump scared. And some participants had a very difficult task, some had a very easy task, and then we measured how it turned out there was an almost perfect linear correlation between mental workload and jump scare intensity. So the more difficult the task was, the stronger our participants responded. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, it means if you want to jump scare your friend, don't just hide behind a door and then wait for them to come by and jump out and yell boo, but give them a difficult mental task to solve. So jump scares, I think, are really interested because the best ones are very carefully timed. They have usually a good alignment between the frightening visual stimulus and the auditory stimulus. So I think we should rehabilitate the jump scare. Yes, it looks like a cheap trick, but the best jump scares are very carefully constructed, very often followed by smiles or laughter. This is something we have found in a haunted house study, where we looked at camera footage of people who were jump scared, and almost 80% of the guests who had been jump scared smiled or laughed just immediately after. So a lot of really interesting things to say about the jump scare.
Hey. Hey, hey. 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 Hey.
So jump scares might be the most sort of hated element in the horror game.
Hey.
A jump scare elicits
Hey.
what is known as a startled response. It's a reflex. And it's really easy to scare people. I mean, you can hide behind the door and
Hey.
wait for somebody to walk by and then jump out and yell, and you get an unexpected reaction. And the startled reflex is a defense.
Hey.
Mechanism that's part of our biology, and it's
Hey.
Is a horror movie a good date movie? So horror researchers have, since the 1980s, talked about something they call the snuggle effect. And that's when young people go to watch a horror movie, and then they snuggle up, because there is nothing like a scary movie to make people get closer to each other in the darkness of the movie theater. If you're frightened by a horror movie, what you experience is a state of bodily arousal. And that arousal might be translated to a kind of erotic stimulation, which is not a bad thing in a dating context. So even though most people who are not horror fans seem to think of horror fans as a kind of adrenaline junkie, thrill-seeking people who just want a kick, the reality is more complicated. And so we've done some research in haunted houses where we have discovered that there are several different kinds of horror fans. So yes, you do have your stereotypical adrenaline junkie who loves horror, who loves the thrill of fear. And what the adrenaline junkie gets out of it is a mood boost. It puts them in a... They enjoy the sensation. But then there's another kind of horror fan that we call the white knuckler. And that's the kind of person who watches a scary movie clenching their fists so that they're...
Hey. 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 Hey.
Knuckles go all white. The kind of person who likes horror, maybe not so much for the intense stimulation. So the white knuckler is a kind of horror fan who likes horror, but sees it as more of a personal challenge in making it through an intensely frightening experience with their mental health intact, getting a different set of benefits from the experience. So very often when we talk to white knucklers, they tell us that what they get out of it is a sense of mastery.
Hey. 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 Hey.
Sense of having moved their boundaries, a sense of having learned important things about themselves, and a sense of having developed as a person. We found a third kind of horror fan.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
Called a dark coper. And a dark coper is somebody who uses horror entertainment as a way to self-medicate. They feel better with their anxiety once they...
Hey. Hey. Hey.
Probably because horror for them is a way to play around with difficult emotions in a way that they have chosen themselves.
Hey.
And where they have full control, and where they know exactly what it is that's making them feel the way they feel. And so for them, horror becomes a kind of tool for handling
Hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hey.
three different kinds of horror fans: adrenaline junkies, white knucklers, and dark cobras, each of whom gets something different out of horror.
Hey.
So how do you survive horror? How do you make it through horror without being traumatized? There are many things you can do.
Hey. Hey, hey, hey.
So if you want the best possible horror experience, it's important that you stay at the sweet spot of fear. And you can do things to stay within the limit. There are things you can do to regulate your own fear, your own anxiety, your own dread. And for many people, if they feel they're getting too scared when they're watching a movie or playing a game, they might be tempted to cover their eyes. But that's a very poor fear regulation strategy. It's better to use a sort of cognitive fear regulation strategy, where you remind yourself
Hey.
not real, there's no real danger. Or you can try to distract yourself by thinking of something else. That works if you're watching a movie. It's not as effective if you're playing a game because you need to stay focused on what's happening. The horror video games can be much more scary than horror movies because it feels as if you, the player, are in the scary world.
Hey. Hey.